Thank you so much, Rabbi Tom, and thank you so much all. Shana Tova. Every day is the same now, except Shabbat. These words were said by one of my congregants at my summer rabbinic internship one Shabbat morning during the opening minutes of the Zoom meeting as we all logged on, face by face. We were talking about how surreal the passage of time is during COVID when this congregant noted that every day is the same now, except Shabbat. He was elderly. He was alone. He was right. What about Shabbat gave him this feeling? Not long ago, he might have said Shabbat was different because he had come to temple, because he had left his house and come to a different, holy place. That was in the times BCE, before the Corona era. How can Shabbat be different now that we can't go anywhere different? We are living in difficult times in so many ways. For those contending with standard COVID concerns, not the stark emergencies of first responders and victims, but the everyday grind of life in the time of COVID. The days have become too often characterized by a silent, smothering sameness, staring into the same computer screen at the same desk in the same room, the same monotony of what we're doing, whether it's the same work for the same job, or whether one is not working, another common COVID condition. Making forays to the same parts of the neighborhood or the same workplace, then immediately heading home. Seeing only the same small bubble of people, if that, and fighting inertia to schedule video chats with others beyond. This perpetual sameness may be fine for the chair and the screen, but we're not objects. We're human beings. We depend on the novelty, wonder, and rejuvenation of a moment that's different from the moment before. We need variety to experience the varied parts of life and ourselves. We need human connection as part of fully lived life as a human. Ralph Waldo Emerson described the routinization of his time like this: the priest becomes a form, the attorney a statute book, the mechanic a machine, the sailor a rope of the ship. Today, we run the risk of feeling as if we are mere inert chairs, the risk of becoming the screens we stare into. Our tradition offers us deliverance. In the very verses we're about to read, in the Torah's opening story of the creation of the world and Shabbat. I'd like to look closely together at the 4 key verbs that narrate God's creating Shabbat. What are these verbs most deeply showing us? First, Vayachal Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. And God completed on the 7th day the task that God had done. Second, Vayishbot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. And God ceased on the 7th day from all the task that God had done. Third, Vayevarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi'i, and God blessed the 7th day. Lastly, Vayikadesh Oto, and God hallowed it. What can we learn from these 4 verbs about the essence of Shabbat? The first, Vayachal, and God completed, focuses on the work of creation. It indicates that that work is now complete. But the second verb, Vayishbot, and God ceased, shifts the focus from the work to God as the one who did it, and who is now doing something completely different, setting tasks aside and entering a state of cessation from work. Vayachal ends the work week, but Vayishbot begins Shabbat. It's when we consciously choose to set other things aside And when we enter a state of cessation from our tasks, that's when Shabbat begins. That is when we Shabbatify ourselves. After all, Vaishvat is the source of the very word, Shabbat. Then come two more verbs, Vayevarech and Vayekadesh, and God blessed and hallowed. These words indicate, first of all, that something about this day is different. It's not like other days that don't have this quality. And indeed, in the Bible, Kodesh, hallowed or holy, can have a meaning akin to designated, as in when something is Kodesh Ladonai, designated for God. So it's not Shabbat until the day is designated to be different. But not different in a bland, insignificant way. God did not just distinguish Shabbat, but blessed and hallowed it. These are luminous words. They lift you up. They open your eyes to all. So Shabbat is not only a day that's different, but also a day that's special, a day that's deeper. So we see here three core concepts that make up Shabbat. In Vayishvat, and God ceased, we see the concept of muktzeh, what gets set aside, literally put at the katzeh, at the edge. In Vayevarech and Vayekadesh, and God blessed and hallowed, we see two more concepts. Shinui, literally change, that which is different on Shabbat. And Yeterah, literally additional, that which is deeper, more awe-inspiring, more joyful about Shabbat. What makes these three concepts so significant for the time of COVID is that these are things we can do anywhere. We don't have to be physically in temple or even go out the door to do things to make Shabbat a different day and a deeper day and to set other things aside for the day. Even God created Shabbat not as a place to go like the land or the sea. Even God experienced Shabbat purely through the things God did or did not do on that day. And thus, God gave us an incredible gift. Because if it even works for God, surely it can work for us. And when it does, when Shabbat is different and deeper with other things set aside, what exactly is the result? A distinctive state of mind, a distinctive experience. And states of mind and experiences too can happen anywhere. The venerable 20th century Reform rabbi Arnold Jacob Wolff of Chicago defined Shabbat activity like this, quote, "Forbidden work is acquisition, aggrandizement, altering the world. On Shabbat, we are obliged to be, to reflect, to love and make love, to eat, to enjoy," unquote. That state of just being, that state of love and joy is one we can enter anywhere. Similarly, celebrated 20th century Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of New York called Shabbat a palace in time. Standing on the shoulders of this giant, I might call Shabbat a palace in the mind. The living we do within the time we have and the internal landscape we inhabit during that time. This is where Shabbat resides. And you don't have to go anywhere to get to this land. Our tradition gives us tools. It gives us things we can do to face a time like the time of COVID. These things can be large as well as small, because a gesture can spark a state of mind. And so the small can be large. And for us as Reformed Jews, living by the principle of choice through knowledge, we have an extraordinary opportunity. Thousands of years of the back catalog of the record shop of Jewish history, all the traditions of those who came before us, and all the practices of halakha, of Jewish law, that we inherit as we choose, as we create what we will do to bring Jewish values to life in our time. And it's unique for each of us, isn't it? The design of this palace of the mind will be different in each mind. Rabbi Eugene Borowitz, beloved Reformed theologian and father of our very own Lisa Borowitz, taught that God wants each of us, quote, to fulfill the common duty of all Israel as just the me I am, unquote. So I'd like to share with you some of the traditions and practices I choose that make a difference for me personally in my life. First, Yeterah, a day that's deeper. One practice that ushers me into this state of mind is wearing white on Shabbat. I hang up whatever I was wearing before, busy with patterns as a weekday. And I put on a color that's as clear, as pure, as an empty inbox. The color of that part of the sky at dusk that's above the sunset, below the blue, simply pausing to breathe. Putting on that color lets me just breathe. Just knowing that I'm wearing something festive and bright, it puts me in a state of mind that's festive and bright. The state of mind of a clean slate, of living anew, just knowing I'm putting on those clothes for the purpose of making it Shabbat for me, that itself makes me feel that it's now Shabbat. Second, Shinui, a day that's different. What's more routine than waking up to an alarm? So I wake up to a different alarm on Shabbat. On weekdays, I wake up to this. It's crystal clear, not too jarring, and it wakes me up. That's what it's for. But it's also the sound of hustling into another regular day and its laters. So on Shabbat, I wake up to this. The moment I hear these different sounds, gentler, calmer, sunnier, I wake up and hear the presence of Shabbat. My bedroom is the same, yet my state of mind is different to open a day that's different. And muktzeh, or in Yiddish and Ashkenazi pronunciation, muktzah. What gets set aside? I love the way halachic tradition and human psychology interact. There's the traditional halachic practice that things that are not to be used on Shabbat are muktzeh, out of bounds, and thus prohibited to move during Shabbat, from coins and wallets to hammers and nails. And then there's the phenomenon that when we pick up things with our hands, we may be picking up more weight than we realize. For me, maybe it was growing up and learning the feeling of just picking up a bill to get ready to pay it. Maybe it was my first year of law school, as I made choices about what to read when. Trust me, first year of law school, you have no problem telling the difference between reading for work and reading for pleasure. Just picking up one of my books for contracts or torts would give me the sensation of labor. Bit by bit, I found a deep appreciation for the concept of muktzeh, for a day when we get to choose the things we do and don't pick up, rather than the things choosing us. When we can sideline things that are too often present, and thus make present things that are too often sidelined. I remember one day learning that according to Orthodox views, it's considered prohibited work to tear open an envelope on Shabbat, so all envelopes are muktzeh. What I kept on thinking was that Before I made a choice about what to do with an envelope on Shabbat, I would want to know what was inside the envelope. If it were a letter from a friend, then the experience of reading it would be deeply Shabbistic. If it were a bank statement or a credit card bill, then I would seek to make that experience muktzeh on Shabbat, but not because of tearing the envelope, because of reading what's in it. Sure enough, one Friday night, I opened my mailbox and discovered a letter from one of my closest friends. I felt glee in my bones as I opened the envelope, feeling as if my buddy himself were stepping out of the envelope to spend Shabbat with me. So when we choose our muktzeh, when we set aside bank statements, what then do we set in bounds? Human connection and the feeling of sacred spirit. What we tune out makes possible what we tune into. And if we can't do it face to face, well, that's why God invented Zoom. And normal face-to-face days will come back. For me, practices like these construct the palace of the mind of Shabbat. They place me in a state of awareness where billowing in like the spring's first wind-filling sunlight is God's presence in this world. And I feel in awe of that sublime presence, and frankly, grateful and joyful for the gift of divine company. And for my congregant this past summer, who said every day is the same now except Shabbat, he found his shinui, his change, when he logged on to Shabbat morning services. He designated his muktzeh when he set his focus on our conversation and then services and tuned out all else. And from the wry, bemused, almost laughing way that he said it, every day is the same now except Shabbat. It seemed he found genuine gladness in coming. If that's not Yeterah, what is? The same thing that makes reform, choice through knowledge, unique to each of us, it also makes it hard. Choices are hard. Not being sure what to do is hard. Reform Judaism is less like classical music and more like jazz. Reform Judaism teaches that that's part of the messy project of living as humans in partnership with God. And yet we don't do it alone. Jewish tradition gives us all a language. Then each of us speaks, and we gather to speak together. Shabbat's opportunity to be somewhere different, even when we can't go anywhere different. It's just what the doctor ordered right now. And yet, every era is a good time to build palaces in our minds. Holy, light-filled places made up of the humble bricks of the things we do and don't do, the things we do and don't talk about. Judaism does not live only in physical temples. Judaism offers us tools to make any home a temple. Today is Rosh Hashanah. Today we celebrate God's creation. When better than right now to celebrate what we might create any Shabbat of the year? One of the great treasures of the Jewish calendar is that we never need to wait long for sacred time to come around again. Each Shabbat points ahead to the next one, and thus evokes not only the miracle of the seventh day, but perhaps a greater miracle yet, the miracle of the 14th day and the 21st day and onward. Each time a sacred day ends, whether Rosh Hashanah tonight or any Shabbat at Havdalah, that ending points forward to the next regularly scheduled miracle, to our chance to create the next creation. I wish you and your families, as much as is possible, a year of a steadily growing spirit of creation. and a year l'chaim tovim u'shalom, a year for good life and for peace.